It's an honor to be invited anywhere because people don't have to listen to you. And anytime folks create space, let alone ask you to come and talk, it's an honor. So thank you. I want to give respect to the families who are here today to celebrate the graduates, and I want to honor the Most High and the ancestors and the spirits that are in this room with us right now. I want to give respect to the lands that we're on, and the sacrifice and the death that took place for us to be here, for colleges and universities for that matter to exist. And it's my prayer that my ancestors guide me today, because commencement speeches and speeches around graduation time, I don't have a very good history with those. When I was in high school, I gave a commencement speech, and upon hours and hours of revision, I was asked to make one really important revision. And that was from my principal, who suggested that I remove the moment of silence for our fallen classmate Jarvis. And I can remember the feeling, the tension that existed around having a type of institutional legitimacy or remaining in solidarity with my community. And I colluded to the powers that be and removed it. And years later, as a graduate student, I was invited to give a commencement at a UC. And this time I was invited to give two speeches, one in the morning ceremony and one in the evening. And I decided to speak about the anti-immigrant and anti-migrant and anti-black policies that were permeating our country, to indict our country, but also to invite the graduates who were present to take up the charge, to disrupt hopelessness, to disrupt the anti-blackness, to disrupt the social death that was dominating our society. And at the end of that speech, I was told that in order to present at the evening ceremony, that I needed to revise my speech. And so I did. Because I thought about the people who invited me to that ceremony. And I thought about where I was at that point in my career. And what I didn't understand in high school, and what I didn't even understand in my 20s, was that there was nothing that I would be able to do. There was no sacrifice, no revision, no omission of information that would actually gain me space within the academy. And so today I come to talk to you with fear, because I'm not sure where I am, and I'm not very sure which audience I'm in front of. There's some familiar faces out there, but I still have fear in what I have to say and what I feel called to say. And for folks who have taken my class, you know that I don't always say things that make people comfortable. And today I come to talk about death at a commencement. And I know that's such a scary thing in this country. In a country where we avoid confronting death at all costs. Most funerals, we refuse to look at the body. We rush through the grieving process. In the West, death is such a frightening thing. But I'm asking us today to confront death in meaningful ways, because I think right there in its stiffness, I think right there in meaningful ways is life, and life more abundantly. Take the case, and I've been telling this story a few times this year, take the case of Edwidge Dandicat's Crick Crack. Any of y'all ever read that? 4 people? No, I'm kidding. 2 people. Edwidge Dandicat, a Haitian writer, writes Crick Crack, and in this story, there is a short story called Children of the Sea. And in that, the main character, Celine, is traveling from Haiti to Florida. And she's a teenager, and she has an infant in her arms. And I'm reading this as a late teenager. And she has an infant in her arms, and throughout their journey, she is constantly working to clean the baby. So much so that she's bathing it multiple times during the day. She's changing its clothes. And folks who are on this tiny boat begin to look at her and wonder what in the world is going on. And at one point, they see her spraying perfume on the baby. And onlookers begin to realize that on this journey, the baby has been dead the entire time. And essentially what she was working to do, though it looked like acts of care, though it looked like she was nurturing the baby, she was essentially working to cover up the smell of decay. Let me tell you something. Teachers, prospective teachers, those who have been in classrooms, we have to be cautious of our practices. Because so many times they can look like care. And so many times they can look like nurturing practices. And I come today to say that we have to be critical in what we do, because essentially, regardless of how tired we are, how fatigued we leave that building, we need to make sure that we are not essentially doing things that simply cover up the stench of death. How absurd would that be? To be in classrooms for 2 years, you could have been doing so much more. To essentially learn practices that perpetuate the reproduction that got us in the program in the first place. And so I know that we are equipped with critical pedagogy and why part, and what I ask is why? Because what I've noticed is that teacher after teacher after teacher that I've coached, that I've observed, have beautiful, groundbreaking curriculum. And to what end? To assess in the same ways that we've been assessing since our parents have been in schools? For what? To patch young people up, to put them right back into abusive relationships in classrooms and structures? And so many of us have been doing work. So many of us, including myself, have had to come to the realization that we were essentially covering up that stench. And so I want to award many of y'all, I want to celebrate many of y'all today, because some of you have made critical decisions. And when I say critical, I'm talking about in the sense that Cornel West talks about critical. He says, we must think critically, but it takes courage to think. I want you to think about my instances with those commitments. He says it takes courage to think. And he says you have to say that in America because it is such an anti-intellectual civilization. He says it's market-driven, obsessed with business and short-term gain, and it places a premium, watch this, on intelligence, which is nothing but a manipulative faculty. We're talking about intellect, and sometimes we make that synonymous with intelligence. He says intelligence engages in immediate evaluation. Think about how we grade. Think about how we assess, how we evaluate children. Intelligence engages in immediate evaluation of various particular subjects in order to gain access to short-term gain. Whereas intellect evaluates the evaluation, looks at hidden presuppositions, the tacit assumptions, what holds an entire vision, a framework, a paradigm together. And so I'm asking you to continue in the critical thinking and the critical work that may someday help you reach the conclusion that you are not just there to address the toxicity in schools, but maybe you have been called to deconstruct the toxicity that is school.
Yes.
As we engage in those critical acts of confronting death, what we can then realize is the life that's actually in front of us. I know that's challenging in a country that preserves death, every December 25th. We essentially buy dead trees. And we decorate it. And when the tree is saying, I am dying, we vacuum around it. We spray it. Y'all see what I mean? our Western culture. And so some folks have said, what do you mean, Tiff, in the confrontation of death and critiquing and analyzing schools? Well, if we do that, and it begins to fall, what are you suggesting? What do I have left? What did I spend all these years doing? What was all this pain for? Your message sounds so apocalyptic. Is what people have actually said to me. And it hit me, and it bothered me. And I took that message to some black women, particularly some queer black women. I said, well, what do we do with that? And there was a woman named Kinley who said, here's the thing about apocalypse. An apocalypse is only scary in white literature. She said, if you look into black sci-fi, particularly the work of Octavia Butler, science fiction, the apocalypse is one of the most exciting aspects of her work. And she told me that an apocalypse is only scary to those who have benefited from a horrific society. And the idea of a crumbling world and a crumbling society is really only frightening to those who have benefited from the subjugation of others within that society. But to those who have been oppressed, to those who have been marginalized, to those who have been dehumanized, the idea of that crumbling world, of an end of those structures that reproduce death over and over and over again, the idea of an apocalypse to those people is exciting. And so today I invite you to confront that death. And I say congrats to so many of you who have been allowing parts of yourself to die daily. Because what I know and what I say to my students is that if you have lived in this country, you know more about rape, exploitation, violence than you do about real love and nurturing and all the things that we actually did not get in our schooling experiences. And so I applaud the graduates. I applaud the students for the work. Some of y'all have already been doing that work in allowing parts of misogyny and patriarchy to die so that you are actually prepared to help students who have been sexually assaulted in your schools, so that you are actually prepared to sit with them in meaningful ways. I applaud y'all who have been confronting the whiteness, not just white students. I applaud y'all who have been deconstructing in ways that those parts of us have died, so that you can, as you commence, participate in what I'm excited about, a more apocalyptic education. Congrats.